students. My name is Kate Malahlela, the primary lecturer for the module DPP1501. Today's presentation is based on Learning Unit 3, which is about identification and support for learners with barriers to learning. For learners with barriers to learning to be accommodated, they must be screened, identified, assessed, and supported. So in your study guide, you will realize that we have outlined different types of assessment from page 22 to page 29. So these different types of assessment are baseline assessment, formative assessment, diagnostic assessment, summative assessment, and evaluative one. Please familiarize yourself with this section to understand how they differ. So now focusing on the policy on screening, identification and assessment. This is also found in Unit 3 of your study guide, and it will be so much helpful for you to be able to respond to some of the assignment questions. So the policy on screening, identification, assessment, and support is in short called SIAS, or the SIAS policy, which has been published by the Department of Basic Education in 2014. I encourage you to also familiarize yourself with the contents of this policy document. It's very, very much important. So now looking at the rationale for the SIAS document, or for the SIAS policy. The SIAS policy has a purpose of teaching you about identification, assessment, and support for learners who may or are experiencing learning barriers. This policy document also guides the management and support for teaching and learning for learners who experience learning barriers. It directs the education system on how to plan, budget, and program support at all levels of the system. It guides the enrollment of learners in special schools. It also guides the composition of and functioning of key support structures, such as the institutional level support teams, or the ILST. The SIAS policy document also provides protocol and tools to be used by various role players to implement the SIAS process. Now, looking at the outline of the SIAS process, it is divided into 3 stages. The first stage is called initial screening. So in this case, in this stage, we make use of the learner profile and other document. You'll learn more about this as we continue with our presentation. Stage 2 is about assessment and intervention by the teacher and the school-based support team. And in this case, they make use of the support needs assessment form 1 and 2. Or the SNA 1 and 2. Stage 3 involves the district-based support team that uses support needs assessment form 3 to guide their discussions regarding the information provided by the school-based support team. So the SIAS process, stage 1. As I've already mentioned, that we are going to learn more about the stage 1 for the SIAS process. This stage 1, as already been mentioned, is called the initial screening and identification. So in this stage, screening happens especially on admission and at the beginning of each phase, which means it is an ongoing process. The sources of information for screening include learner profile, which contains the learner number, the face, personal information, reports from parents, in most cases from parents' interviews about this learner, health professionals, psychologists, if applicable, and other relevant sources of information about the learner, such as the year-end reports. So other documents that can be so much helpful in the initial screening process include the Road to Health booklet that can also help in screening and identification of barriers to learning, especially for grade R learners at foundation phase levels. So another document that can be helpful is the Integrated School Health Program report, and then the report of the teachers who are currently involved with the learner are also very much vital in this stage. So all of these tools can be used in the initial screening and identification of the learners who are having some barriers to learning. Looking at the classroom support, after the learners, or once the learners have been identified as having barriers to learning, they will need the classroom support. This can be carried out through, for an example, curriculum differentiation. I'm going to explain this in a nutshell as I proceed with my presentation. So curriculum differentiation will help in supporting learners who are having barriers to learning. Then again, with regard to support, we look at the nature of support needed. In this case, the teacher, together with the school-based support team, can develop what we call the individual support plan. So we also look at the level of support needed, whether the learner will need low, medium, or high support. So this involves specialized services like remedial education, counseling, rehabilitation, and therapeutic services. Remember, I'm talking about the support for learners with barriers to learning. The support also involves various personnel for support provisioning, like the learning support teachers with expertise, the school-based support teams, the district-based support teams, etc. So these are the personnel that will help in supporting learners with barriers to learning according to the SIAS program. So resources that are needed will be, for example, assistive technologies, specialized learning and teaching support materials, and accommodative infrastructure. I believe with regard to assistive technologies, this will help learners with special educational needs, for instance, those with hearing impairments or with visual impairments and so forth. Okay, now implementation of curriculum differentiation. With regard to the implementation of curriculum differentiation, we look at the following. Number one, adjustment and adaptation of the content. What is the content? The content is what the learners are expected to learn. Then we make the content easy to understand for all learners. Remember, we are talking about inclusive education. So all learners are supposed to be accommodated in our classroom activities. So the content should accommodate all learners. In this way, we will be implementing curriculum differentiation. So we can also use, for an example, what we call multi-level teaching or presentation of teaching and learning content at different levels. consider different levels or different learning styles of learners. This information about different learning styles can be found in your study guide. Please familiarize yourself with the contents of your study guide always so that you can be able to respond to some of the assignment questions. Right. Again, we can use what we call, or we can implement what we call scaffolding. This is part of curriculum differentiation. With scaffolding, learners may require extensive initial guidance, proofreading of written work, breaking down of content into smaller chunks, and so forth. So curriculum differentiation also involves teaching methods or the process. How do you teach learners in the classroom situation? Okay. How do you support learners with barriers to learning? So, in order to implement curriculum differentiation, like to accommodate the diverse learners, remember this module is referred to as diversity, pedagogy, and practice. So you are compelled to accommodate the diverse learners in your classroom situation. So what methods or which methods can be applied in order to accommodate the diverse learners in your classroom? So you can apply what we call cooperative learning, demonstration method, multisensory approach, aided language stimulation, and peer tutoring. Remember, you have been asked to respond to a question regarding these procedures or methods of teaching in your assignment number 2. So please familiarize yourself with this, with the content of your study guide. And not only the study guide, remember the study guide is there to guide you. So you must look for other sources of information. You can go to the internet, look for articles, look for any other sources of information that can add more knowledge to you or to the contents of your study guides. All right. Now looking at stage 2 of the SIAS process, using support needs assessment form 1, SNA 1. When are we expected to use the support needs assessment tool number 1? So we make use of this tool when a learner has been identified as at risk using the following sources of information: the learner profile areas marked with asterisks, which will guide you towards which early intervention programs will be needed. Areas needing ongoing support. Personal information of the learner. You will find out whether the learner has some sort of disability or the learner needs a social grant and so forth. Medical information about the learner. And then this must be completed by the teacher in collaboration with parents or caregivers of the learner. Okay. Again, looking at the information captured, which must be captured in support needs assessment form 1. This will need teacher intervention support or strengths and challenges. Curriculum, to ensure that the curriculum is flexible enough to accommodate all learners. The learning environment, remember your teaching and learning environment should always be inclusive. The physical environment, which entails the school surrounding, which must also accommodate learners with mobility problems or difficulties and so forth. Additional comments about barriers to learning must be captured in the SNA form 1. additional support required from school-based support team, schedule log of consultations with parent or guardian of a learner and the signature teacher or the parent of the learner. All of these people should be involved in the support for learners with barriers to learning. Areas of concern, again, looking at the support needs assessment form 1. Describe your area or your concern about the learner. For example, when did you become aware of this, that the learner has a barrier to learning? How did you become aware of it? How did you screen this learner? What were the outcomes when you were conducting screening and identification? So this is based on your own observation or on what is reported or what is being reported. Okay, the impact on the learner. Okay, how is this observation currently affecting the learner's learning and development? So these are the duties of the teacher together or in collaboration with the school-based support team and the parent or the caregiver of the learner. Okay, now continuing with the strengths and the needs of the learner. You as the teacher should be responsible to detect these needs of a learner, especially when you conduct the screening and identification procedure. Okay, how does the learner communicate with you as the teacher or with the peers in the classroom? So in this regard, you are going to look at this, the receptive language of the learner and also the expressive language so that you can pick up whether the learner has a language barrier to learning or not. So looking at communication, the learner's ability to understand the words, sentences, and meaning of what other people are saying is called receptive language, as well as the ability to put thoughts into words and sentences in a way that makes sense and is grammatically acceptable, or to express himself or herself. Is this learner able to express himself or herself in a meaningful way, in a way that other people can understand? Then in this case or in this way, you as the teacher will be looking at the expressive language of the learner. So these are some of the things that you can pick up when you are doing the screening. Okay, now looking at learning itself, you look at whether the learner's ability to practice satisfactorily, or whether the learner is able to participate, satisfactorily on grade level regarding subject content and assessment. Is it okay with this learner? Is he or she able to participate satisfactorily with regard to the subject content or assessment? So if the learner cannot or is unable to do this, then you will realize that this learner has some kind of learning impairment. Okay. You can also look at the behavior and social competence of the learner. Here, you look at the learner's ability to interact and work with other learners in the classroom situation, especially when coming to classroom routines. How does the learner cooperate, or how does this learner interact with other learners in the classroom? So these are some of the things that are very much important for you to look at. Now, looking at health and wellness, the learner's physical appearance By mere looking at this learner, what do you see as the teacher? Is the learner looking healthy, clean, or is he or she well-fed? You also look at the emotional well-being and health status of the learner. Okay, in this way, you can consult the school health screening report or road to health card if the learner is still in the grade R phase or in the foundation phase. Okay, classroom and school. Look at the factors within the classroom and school environment. Policies, the school ethos, the attitudes, skills, resources, safety, and so forth. These are very much important so that the school environment accommodates all or the diverse learners, because this can impact on the learner's effective participation in the learning process and programs offered at the school. Looking at the family, home, and community situation, factors that may be impacting on the learner's ability to achieve satisfactorily at school include, for an example, the family structure, the family stability, biological parents, siblings, and other significant adults, whether the learner is an orphan or not, a child-headed household, number of schools attended, homelessness, is the learner in foster care, is the learner a refugee, an immigrant, is he or she exposed to substance abuse, is this learner exposed to domestic violence, or are the parents divorced? Is the learner neglected? Is the learner disabled? You know, you look at all these circumstances that may affect or negatively impact on the learner's performance or participation in the school activities. Okay. Still on stage 2 of the SIAS process, support needs assessment form 1. So we look at assessment and intervention by the teacher again. So the teacher should provide additional classroom support where necessary. For example, as I've already elaborated, curriculum differentiation and remedial intervention. The teacher should see to it or should ensure that support is effective. And the teacher should seek help from institutional level support team if support is ineffective. If the support from the teacher himself or herself is ineffective, this teacher should seek assistance from the institutional level support team, also called the school-based support team. The school-based support team uses what we call the support needs assessment tool number 2 or form 2 to guide them when reviewing teacher support and deciding on additional support that will be given. This is a tool that is used to guide school-based support team to systematically think, discuss, and capture information on a learner that has been referred to them by the teacher. That is why I've said that the teacher should seek further support from the school-based support team, especially if he or she finds that his support or her support to this learner that has been identified as having barriers to learning is not sufficient. So the school-based support team will have a meeting with the teacher. So the school-based support team will also use the support needs assessment team tool number 2 which must be used when all the support is needed, when the support is needed from them as the school-based support team. And the learner should be supported in addition to what the teacher has already been or has already done to offer support to this learner, especially when the learner is not responding well to the support that was already offered or that was offered by the teacher. Support may require the development of an individual support plan. This will involve the intervention of the teacher together with the school-based support team. So you can see that the SIAS protocol really requires you as the teacher to intervene in supporting the learner with barriers to learning. Now, looking at different types of support provisioning or the levels of support that can be provided to the learners who have been identified as having barriers to learning. So this support can be offered at different types of schools, or let me say at different levels of support. Okay, we have what we call institutional arrangement, where we have learners that can be supported in ordinary schools. So learners that are supported in ordinary schools are offered low-level support, whereas learners that are supported in full-service inclusive schools are offered moderate levels of support. These are ordinary schools which are specially equipped to address a full range of barriers to learning in an inclusive education system. I'm talking about the full service schools. Okay, there are also what we call the special schools. Special schools are also called the schools that offer resources. Okay, they offer high level of support. These schools are equipped to deliver educational resources for learners in need of high intensive educational and other support. Remember, for learners to be placed at special schools, it is not the responsibility of the teacher. Should the learner be identified at school level, that this learner requires high levels of support, the teachers or the teacher, in collaboration with the school-based support team, should consult with the district-based support team, so that the district-based support team should be the one that refers the learner to a special school as a resource center. So the teachers are not supposed to refer the learner to the special school themselves, but they should consult with the district-based support team so that they are the ones to endorse a referral of the learner to a special school. Okay, looking at the institutional arrangement and level of support provisioning, again, we have the support structures, people to offer support to learners. This include teachers and parents. They offer collaborative support. This include institutional level support teams, or what we call the school-based support teams. These are the teams established by an institution or by the school to offer support at school level. We also have the district-based support teams, or the groups of departmental professionals. This can be, or this group of officials are based at the Department of Basic Education or the Department of Education. and their responsibility is to provide inclusive education through training, curriculum delivery, distribution of resources, and placement of learners who need intensive support at special schools. I think I've already elaborated on this. So please read more information in the study guide about the duties and responsibilities of the school-based support team and the district-based support team, especially in preparation for your assignments, so that you can be able to respond to the assignment questions in an acceptable way. Right, this diagram or this graphical presentation only shows the levels of support. It's just a summary of what I've already elaborated on. We have the high level of support, which is at special schools, moderate support, which is at full service inclusive schools, and the low level support, which is offered at ordinary schools. Okay, all learners are routinely screened. Support needs are categorized as low, moderate, or high. The level is determined by the frequency, intensity, scope, and cost of support provisioning. This means that the required support is rated rather than the learner. We don't rate the learner, but we rate the required support. Right, now looking at the SIAS process stage 3, the district-based support team uses the support needs assessment form 3 to guide their discussions of information provided by the school-based support team. Discussion should include the following: reading and review of information provided by the school-based support team, determining if appropriate intervention has been provided, determine nature and level of support to be provided, and again, the district-based support team uses what we call Form DPP1501 to capture support to be provided to the learner, and Form DPE122 to capture support to be provided or to be given to the school. Remember, these are two different tools. DPE121 is used to capture support to be provided to the learner, whereas DPE122 is used to capture support to be given to the school by the district-based support team. Right. In conclusion, I hope you have enjoyed today's lesson, which is also very useful towards responding to some of the assignment questions that are set for this module DPP1501. Please remember, all the assignments are to be submitted online. I'm just doing this as reminding you. All the assignments are supposed to be submitted online on your MyUNISA Moodle platform. Assignments sent to the lecturers' emails are not accepted or cannot be accepted. Lastly, please always remember to make use of your MyLife email address when you communicate with your lecturers. Please do not use your personal Gmail address or Yahoo address and so forth. Because if you make use of personal email addresses to communicate with your lecturers, they may not be able to assist you. We highly recommend that you always use your MyLife email address. And that's where you will find a lot of information from us as your lecturers. Thank you so much for this time, and please enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.